Though I am madly in love with the 1920s and 1930s style-wise, I tend to gravitate to the 1950s. One of my favorite seasons for 1950s inspired outfits is summer. From bare shoulder blouses to cute shorts to capris to big, flowy, gathered skirts, the 1950s is my dream era. In this video, I'm going to talk about the summer fashion through the years of the 1950s. If you want to see the styles and the changes that happen throughout the decade, keep watching. Hello and welcome to Killer Kitsch Lizzie, my weird little world. I like to knit and sew and do other crafty things. Since so many of you liked my video on 1930s summer fashion, I thought I would do another one about the 1950s summer fashion, since that tends to be the era or decade of style that I gravitate to for my own body. Though I absolutely love the 1930s and wish I had way more of it in my wardrobe, I do tend to wear and make clothing that is of the 1950s style, and I just find it is more flattering to my body shape, so that's why I just kind of, as I said, gravitate towards that. However, I love the 1930s, but this is about the 1950s. And there's a lot of really fun summer fashion in the 1950s, and a lot of really fun 1950s summer movies that, you know, they're very inspiring, and I'm sure even in the 50s they inspired a lot of women's and men's fashion. If you recently watched my 1930s video, you would have heard me talk about how from the beginning of the decade to the end of the decade, fashion tends to change quite a bit. You know, at the beginning of a decade, you're going to be seeing some of the previous decades still kind of sprinkled in the first year or two of that decade. Like the 1920s, you're still seeing a little bit of that late 1920s fashion in the early 1930s. 1950s, not much different. You know, at the beginning of the 1950s, you're still seeing some of the 1940s in there. Now, 1947 onward, the shape of garments changed a lot with the new look. You know, the cinched-in waist, the bigger skirts. So you see a lot of that at the beginning of the 1950s as well. And then, you know, towards the end of the 1950s, as things have changed a bit, you'll see a little bit of that melt into the 1960s fashions. Another thing that changes in the 1950s from the 30s and 40s is the war is over, the Great Depression is over. Now, you know, the 1950s are living again in another time of abundance, like the 1920s. However, at this point, there's a lot more safeguards financially for people. For instance, you know, in the 1920s, banks were not regulated, and that is one of the big things that led to the Great Depression. And now you've got the banks are regulated, and so you're not really worried about that happening again at that point, as well as there are more jobs. The economy is booming. People have a lot more money to spend on luxuries than ever before, and trust me, they are. After almost 2 decades of like having to be very careful with your money, you know, the Depression and the war, now they're like buying cars, buying houses, going on holidays, that kind of thing. Like, life has become a lot calmer and more exciting and more fun, and there's a lot more socializing happening and a lot more disposable income at this point. You're gonna see, you know, in a lot of movies, especially like kids going off to camp. going out on the friend's yacht. People, you know, families buying boats to go out on the lake, cottages. Um, yeah, just a lot more disposable income, a lot more luxury. The middle class is being built up, and this shows in fashion as well. Now, something you do start to see return with the new look is in the late 1940s is one of the reasons for this is with the more cinched in waists and fuller skirts comes more structured undergarments. You're starting to see a certain return, or sort of a return to corset type garments. And when I say that, I mean the girdle. And with the girdle comes control of getting that smaller waist again, right? Sometimes you need to pad out your hips so that you have that more of that hourglass look. And a lot more structures come back into the garments. You know, in the 1930s and even in the early part of the 40s, you see these flowy, more romantic style garments. And now, you know, early 1950s, you're starting to see a little more structure, especially in jackets. You know, the shoulders are like not as broad as the 1940s, but there's that structure there in women's clothing. And so there is some of freedom of movement has disappeared again to a certain degree, especially if you want to keep up with like high fashion and whatnot. Then as we move a little bit more into the 1950s, you're gonna now start to see things soften up a little bit. Shoulders aren't going to be as drastic anymore. Even the lines of the clothing are not going to be as drastic anymore. And you're starting to see more casual, fun, especially in the summer garments. As well as with the sort of the structure of things starting to soften up, so are colors. Now you're moving into things that are more in the pastel range. You're going to start seeing plaids, a lot of plaids actually, and a lot more things like florals again, but a lot of dotted fabric and checks like gingham and things like that. Those are all going to become very popular with summer fashion. And also another thing you're going to start to see from the beginning, and then as we progress through the decade, the length of shorts are going to change. You're going to have a more longer short at the beginning of the decade, even more of a Bermuda style short, and then as we get to the end of the 50s, creeping into the 60s, short shorts. The beautiful short shorts start to appear. And thing that is going to be a holdover though, I think for the entire decade, if I remember correctly, that high waist for trousers and shorts is not going anywhere. And where you start to see that waist drop down is in the towards the late 60s throughout the 70s. The waists on all kinds of women's garments, even men's, shortens quite drastically. But for the most part of the 50s, you're still going to see the really nice high-waisted shorts and trousers, which I personally feel like are more flattering on a body than the low-rise style garments. I've never been a fan of those, like even when they were like super trendy in the I want to say early 2000s, mid 2000s, I can't remember now, something like that. Jeans especially, I think that's where the beginning of the 2000s, that's when I stopped wearing trousers because of that fact that the waistlines got so short. And I have a really high waist, and that was just not flattering on me. Now, with even shorts getting shorter, you're going to start to also see other summer trouser type garments getting a bit longer, but in a very comfortable, very cute way. So Bermuda shorts, which I've mentioned already, but capris and pedal pushers, they're probably one of my favorite summer looks. And I'm wearing, though I have the shirt tucked out or untucked, I have a pair of Loretta shorts on right now, I would like to turn those into pedal pushers. However, I am going to, I'll have to like make the leg more narrow. But I love the look of a cute little top and a pair of pedal pushers. Even on hot summer days, right? So cute with a little pair of like sandals or espadrilles or ballerina flats or even like summer style sneakers. How super cute is that outfit? It's perfection. Speaking of shoes, something you're going to start to see a lot of in the 1950s are open-toe sandals or open-toe shoes, period. They were not normally very popular, but became popularized in the 1950s. And if you go back into the summer of the 30s and 40s, you do see some, especially in the 40s, you do see some of the open-toe sandals. You will see them become very popular in the 1950s. Another thing, and I talked about this in the 1930s video, that you're starting to see even more innovation in now is bathing suits. They're becoming even more structured and even more figure flattering ever before. And a lot of that has to do with the internal structure of the actual bathing suit itself. So as with the 1930s and 40s, latex is being used, but now at this point in the 50s, it is actually being added to even a greater variety of fabrics, including cotton and taffeta. As well as in 1956, Speedo introduced nylon into their swimwear. And the benefits of nylon were that it stretched more easily over your body, it dried faster, and it retained its shape. Like, you know, cotton as an example, it's going to lose some of its shape when it's wet. Wool loses its shape, that kind of thing. But the nylon did not. It bounced right back. And also, another innovation during the 50s for bathing suits was ultralight fabrics. And that would make bathing suits even more comfortable. And, of course, we start to see, and thank you, Brigitte Bardot, the introduction of more of a, how's that song go? The itsy bitsy teeny weeny polka dot bikini? Oh my god, my dad had a K-Tel record collection, and in one of the compilations, actually it was probably in a bunch of the compilations, was that song. And when we were kids, we used to get a huge kick out of playing that song. I know, sometimes I digress from what I'm talking about. Of course, we can't forget the beautiful 1950s sundresses with big, huge, flowy skirts. And cotton, especially, was all the rage because it was flowing again. You know, in the 30s, it was hard to find. And the flour sack dress happened during the 40s. It was used during the war effort, but now it is largely available again. And it was showing up in everything from like women's dresses, blouses, men's clothing, trousers, like you name it. Cotton was showing up, especially in the summertime. Everyone was embracing this beautiful, breathable fabric. And you know, in the 50s, full gathered skirts, circle skirts, those were all the rage. The fuller, the better. The bigger the crinoline underneath, the better. Though in the summertime, you're probably going to not wear your crinolines with your cotton skirts, just because crinolines are going to add heat and make them more uncomfortable to wear on hot summer days. So, but yeah, a big, huge circular gathered skirt with a beautiful border print with a cute little top, you know, similar to this, or like a sleeveless top, or a halter top. That is probably one of my go-to summer looks, and it definitely was during the 1950s. Of course, we can't forget the men. So in men's wear, you're still going to be seeing a lot of trousers, but you're going to be seeing them worn more casually now with short sleeve shirts. as well as in the 1950s, that nautical style hasn't gone away. That is a huge summer look for both men and women. I mean, you know, hey, we're off to our yacht. But another huge look you'd be seeing throughout the 50s was that tiki look. You know, it started in the 40s, during World War II, and you're still seeing that into the 1950s, especially men's shirts. You're going to see a lot more Hawaiian shirts and Bermuda shorts, kind of like combination in menswear. And the Hawaiian shirt became like a regular staple in men's wardrobe for the summer. Not just like when you're on the beach, like in the city, you would still see a lot of men in the summer wearing that fun floral shirt, you know, in a backyard for a barbecue or lounging in a neighbor's backyard with a beer, you know. It was definitely a summer staple. And another huge trend that was happening during the 50s, the nylon jacket. That was starting to replace the casual sport jacket. And you definitely would see this in the nautical look as well. But if you look at any like 50s, 1950s movies, that jacket is huge as a casual look. My dad used to wear them all the time when we were kids. And his were like holdovers that he had from when he was, you know, growing up in the 50s. Also, they were still in really good condition when I was a teenager. And I used to steal his nylon jackets. And you are starting to see men more comfortably wearing shorts, and a huge trend in the 1950s, you know, for lounging by the pool were cabana sets. Another thing you're going to start seeing during the summer in the 1950s is denim, and more on men than women, and normally you would see them with like sneakers and they'd be rolled up with like a, you know, a short sleeve shirt or a t-shirt for men more, or your cute little summer top. Like, how cute is that? If you know, didn't have pedal pushers, and it was a hot day, I'm telling you, just rolling those pants up lets some air into your ankles and you feel so much cooler, and it looks cool. Another thing, I also feel like a lot of fun returned back into people's wardrobes, and things are a lot more lighthearted now. And, you know, whether you're at, you know, by a campfire, at the cottage, or by a pool, people just seem to be a little bit more relaxed and enjoying the lovely long summer days. And well deserved after 2 decades of harsh reality and war. So the 1950s definitely, for me, I think became like the fun decade again for a lot of people, just like the 1920s. Well, I hope you liked this video and my look into some of the 1950s summer fashion. Again, my favorite decade for garments for myself. Comment below what your favorite summer decade is. If you are not subscribed already, I would love it if you would subscribe. And give me a thumbs up if you like this type of video. And if you want a 1940s summer wardrobe, let me know. And I will do a video about that as well. So until next time, stay kitschy. Bye!